It was a good decision and a bad decision. It's was a good decision because it's something I've always wanted to do, but bad just because of timing. Um, just the availability of getting parts was very difficult. Um, so yeah, I decided to build a computer. Uh, I chose to do a capstone project because building a computer is something that I've always wanted to do. And I've been researching into it for the last like 2 years, watching videos on building computers. Uh, I was finally ready just to see if I could finally put it together. So yeah, I built a computer. When I started figuring out how I wanted to build a computer, one of the big things was budget. Um, I had a GoFundMe page going, and I was going to see how much money I could get out of that before I decided what parts to buy. I ended up also getting a sponsorship from EVGA, which they make computer components. I emailed probably 10 to 13 companies asking for sponsorship, and they're the only one that got back to me. So when they sponsored me, it actually like really meant a lot. And that saved me around $400 worth of parts. So it was a very big help. Um, and then spent more money on CPU and RAM because that's what's gonna carry most of the weight on my computer. And those two components are will last the longest. I could always swap out a more powerful video card, but having those, it's difficult to swap out. So my mentor for the project was uh, Randy Foderick. He is a professor at university. I forget which one, but he teaches at it's a technical university. He has a lot of knowledge in computers, and he's built his own. And he brought the idea up to me that, hey, Chris, why don't you do a computer for your capstone project? I thought it was a great idea. I never thought of that, but um, he's the one who got me into building it. So um, he also helped me decide what parts I needed for the build, what power supply was necessary. Power supplies range from 350 watts all the way up to 1600 watts. I decided to go with I got the 650 watt power supply from UVGA, and they all have different efficiency ratings. So the one I have is a bronze rated efficiency, which is low. They go all the way up to platinum being the most efficient. But the one I have is good and it works, so I'm happy with it. But then in everything in my computer will run just about any game and it will you only use about, I think right now it's drawing about 500 watts, so I'm not that close to the limit of the power supply, but eventually I'm gonna upgrade it and I'm gonna need to get a different power supply. So yeah. COVID-19 had a big effect on building a computer, because all the parts come from Thailand, Taiwan, China, and all the factories were temporarily shut down. So the supply kept up. There was no supply, but there was still a very high demand. So that just caused distributors to raise their prices a lot. And yeah, so what I could have bet I could have built a computer for $800, but it cost me $1,200 without the sponsorship. So the sponsorship very did help a lot. To get the money, I did a GoFundMe page which raised around $360. I had to borrow $640 from my parents, and then I put in some of my own money too, and I had to get a job so I could pay them back, um, which was an experience. But I'm now working, and I'm gonna eventually upgrade my computer. But yeah, COVID definitely put a big restraint on what I could build. So this slide is just telling about um, my um, my quest to get a sponsorship. All right. So um, when you build a computer, static is like the biggest enemy in building a computer because all these parts are super sensitive to static shock. So by putting the motherboard the um, on top of a box, it takes the risk of static and lowers it. So yeah, and if the chances of it getting static shock, they're not high, but the opportunity is always there for it to get killed by static shock. So I just didn't want to take any chances. So the next thing you do is you take the RAM, which stands for random access memory, which there's different size kits of RAM. This is a 16 gigabyte kit, which is more than enough for powering a computer. And what it will do is it basically supercharges the CPU and makes the CPU able to load more things at once, and then it has it preloaded so you could just put it in immediately, so it's faster. And DIMM slots are the slots where the RAM sits.
The problem is when you tap
and
that
you
for the app, and you got it.
you put the RAM into the two furthest DIMM slots. There's four of them. You put them into the two furthest ones until you get, unless you have a four RAM stick kit. So that's step two. And then step three was applying thermal paste. Normally some CPU coolers that come with the CPU come with it pre-applied. But I had it on the, I put the CPU cooler on the CPU. I forgot to take a picture of it before I did, so I had to take it off, and then I had to clean it all off. Then I had to apply more thermal paste. And thermal paste, it's just, I don't know what it's made of, but it helps spread the heat away from the CPU and towards the CPU cooler. The CPU cooler, take the CPU cooler and place it straight down on the motherboard and latch it down. It works by a retention system. So some of them have back plates where it's held in by screws, but the one I have is a retention system. So there's a latch on either side, and when you're putting it on and you're strapping it down, you feel like it's gonna snap the motherboard, but it's not. It's just holding it tightly against it, so it touches the CPU entirely, so it can get the heat off of the CPU and into the fan and out. And then plug in the RGB, which makes the um, which makes the so a lot of in the like PC gaming,
Okay.
it's very common for people to put um, like colored lights inside their computer. So hold on. It's very common for people to put colored lights, RGB, into their systems just to make it look more interesting. And plugging in the RGB cable, it lets me control the lights all by just a piece of software. So it's not um, it doesn't require me to like change a bulb. It just does it all by a piece of software, and you can make it do like different things. You can make it do like a strobing effect. You can make it do a like different colors and different effects. And then plug in fan cables into the headers, and then the fan control cable. Some fans for PCs have they have uh, PWM, which is the fourth pin, and three of the ones I have are 3-pin ones. So they're not able to control themselves if it senses like high heat, and if the motherboard has a little thermometer in it, and it's able to tell if the computer is getting really hot, then it will turn the fans up to a higher speed. I have one fan that does that, so I didn't really have. I got the three of the fans I got with the computer, and then the fourth one I bought separately just to add more color into the computer because it was boring. Um, and the fourth one is a PWM fan, so it's able to see what what the temperature of the computer is, and then increase or decrease its speed. Um, and it's good that it's able to increase and decrease the speed, because when the fans are running at full speed, they're very loud. So I think better it's better if they're able to control their speed and only be turned off all the way when it needs it, so it's not as loud. Um, then step 5 is put the motherboard inside the computer case and make sure to screw it properly. I was doing this, and I was trying to do it when it was sitting vertically like that. It was really difficult, so I just gave up trying to put it in vertically and decided to try to put it in horizontally. Um, and um, by putting when you put it in, it's the gap in between the top and the bottom was very small, so I had to make sure that I wasn't banging it on the sides. And then you have to make sure it's seated in the I/O shield properly. What the I/O shield does is it prevents dust, and it also grounds the motherboard at the same time. So it sits. If you see the Tough Gaming logo, that is where the I/O shield is. So it's essential to make sure the computer doesn't get dust in it, because when it does, dust is the worst enemy of a computer, and so it's just as Static Shock is. Then step 6 is to install the power supply and plug the cables in. Um, Back to the conversation of power supplies, that some power supplies have different efficiency ratings. Some of them are modular and semi-modular. So the one I have is a semi-modular power supply, meaning that the cable that gets plugged into the motherboard is always there. You can't get rid of it, and it's always like a rigid cable, so it's a pain to bend. But modular power supplies are, you only plug in what cables you need when you need them. So if you have a second graphics card in the computer, then you plug in more cables into the power supply, which gives you the ability to install a second graphics card. But and then the one I have is semi-modular, so part of it is permanently there, part of it you install the cables when you need them. Install the graphics card into the PCI 16X slot on the motherboard and plug the power supply cables in. The graphics card is the last thing you want to install in a computer. One, because of how sensitive it is, and two, that it's very fragile. And I wasn't really thinking about how fragile it was. When I put it in, I had to take it out so I could put a cable behind it. When I was trying to take it out, I kept pulling on it because I didn't release the latch first and it was stuck, but I still kept pulling on it. And I was very happy I didn't break it. But I very well could have broken it, and then I would have had to email EVGA and beg them for another graphics card. But thankfully, I did not break it. Install a hard drive or an SSD into the case and plug in a SATA cable and the power supply cables. So there's a few different ways you could put storage into a computer. You could put NVMe storage, which is the fastest storage out there to date, or you could put SSD, which is a solid state drive, or you could put a SSHD, which is a solid state hard drive, which is back to the SSD. An SSD is a solid state drive, so there's no spinning disk. So it's faster and it's more durable. So you don't have to, with an SSD, you don't have to screw it in. You could just leave it hanging if you want, because there's no spinning disk. It's not sensitive to being dropped. But an SSHD has a small cache of solid state, and then it has an SSD. It has a hard drive which has a spinning disk in it as well. And the one I have is a 2 terabyte solid state hard drive made by Seagate, which has a 32 megabyte cache. So whatever data you use the most is stored on that cache, so you could access it faster. And then a hard drive is just a spinning disk, and there's no cache in it at all. So it's slow, and they're very, very delicate, and you have to screw them in. So, and then you have to plug in the SATA cables, which is what the data goes through, and then the power supply cables, which gives it power so it can spin the disk. You're able to hot swap drives out with the computer on. You're only able to take the SATA cable out, but in order to swap a drive entirely and plug in a new power cable to it, you have to turn the computer off, or else you could lose all the stuff on the drive. Step 9 is to make sure everything is plugged in, and power on the computer, and make sure it posts. What posting is the power on self test, which when it first turns on, it will go through a little checklist. It'll make sure that it's able to access storage, it's able to access RAM, it's able to do what it needs to do. And then if it detects there's anything wrong, it won't tell you what's wrong. It will keep boot cycling. So it'll turn on, post, and then turn off, and then repeat the process again, and you just have to figure out what's wrong with it. It doesn't give you an error code or anything, which is kind of annoying, but I didn't have that problem. But what's cool is my motherboard has lights on it, so when it's posting, it'll go red, orange, green, and then white, and each of those means something else. One will mean it has access to storage. The other will mean that it has access to the video card. So if it doesn't have access to it, it'll just boot cycle, or it won't turn on at all. So yeah, mine didn't have any problems, but I was worried about it having problems. Like I was just saying to myself, it's probably not going to work. It's probably not going to work. So but it did work. So yeah, that's my Capstone presentation.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you.
Good job, Chris.
Thanks.
Terrific job, Chris.
You guys can ask questions if you'd like.
Let me see. Am I
Good job,
unmuted?
Chris.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say that I'm proud of Mike. I can't believe what a good job he did, and he built the computer and he also earned it through work. So that's impressive.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think you had a vision and a passion and something that you really wanted to do, and you made it happen. It's beyond impressive. So really nice job, Chris.
Thank you.
So what's next for you? Do you have any future plans in terms of working on the computer that you built?
Well, at the end of in November, there's a company that makes a graphics card. They're releasing a new graphics card, and it's supposed to cost a lot of money. So I'm gonna get the previous generation card, and I'm gonna buy it in the spring times when it's gonna be cheap. So.
Good. Awesome. Well, keep up the good work. We're really all very, very impressed.
Thank you.
Chris, I think
Yeah.
he thinks that it was wonderful. You did a great job, kiddo.
Did
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay.
I think it was much greater than okay. Terrific job.
Thank you.
Super, super.
So Chris, I did record this, so I'm not gonna post it or anything unless you want me to, but if you want to send it to anybody that didn't get a chance to be here today, I'm happy to send you the file and you could send it off if you want anyone
All right.
to see your presentation, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us.
All right.
Okay, have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so
You
much.
too. Well done, Chris. Keep it up.
Chris,
Thank you.
you get a gold star today, kiddo, and maybe some cookies.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.